Hello, dear friends. I'm Pekka Toveri from Finland. I'm a member of parliament here in the EU Parliament, and we are here today to discuss with Oksana Karpovych about her documentary Intercepted, which is participating in the LUX Audience Award competition. Now, I saw your documentary yesterday. It was very interesting, especially the way it was constructed, that we had just the views of Ukraine, cities, villages damaged by the war, and then you had this dialogue from these intercepted phone calls between Russian soldiers and people at home talking about the war. It was a very interesting approach to this topic. How did you come to that idea?
The idea of the film came to me because of my direct experience of the war.
Yeah.
I was in Ukraine when the Russian full-scale invasion have started. I was actually in the east of Ukraine, and I happened to be working as a local producer with the international reporters, something that I normally don't do as a filmmaker and artist, but something that I had to do because of the necessity and importance. It was important to report about the events that were unfolding. Yeah. But now, today, when the film is finished, I'm very grateful for this experience, and I'm glad that I had that job. It gave me access to many places where I could witness the consequences of the war, the aftermath of the Russian attacks, the aftermath of the Russian occupation, and also numerous war crimes committed by the Russian army in Ukraine. And that experience of witnessing, became the key to the way I approached Intercepted as a film project. Something else that I was doing as a filmmaker that I was not doing as a local producer when I worked with the journalists, that I did out of my own curiosity, was listening to hours of intercepted audio recordings of the Russian soldiers calling from the battlefield, from the trenches, back to their families in Russia, talking to their mothers, sisters, wives, and sharing with them about the reality of the front line, details about everything that was happening to them and everything that they were doing in the war as invaders. Often confessing to their families about the crimes that they were committing. Yeah. When I discovered this material, I was absolutely shocked. I was hurt, exactly because of what I've heard about these confessions in the most inhumane things that they were doing, that they were absolutely aware of doing. And when I listened to this material, I realized the importance of it and decided to make a film that would combine two elements. On the one hand, documentation, observation of the reality of the war, and the aftermath, and the way the war affects the daily life of Ukrainians, the most ordinary Ukrainians, primarily the civilians. And on the other hand, parallel to this, I used those recordings as the material that draw the narrative, recordings that were presenting to the viewers all sorts of absurd explanations that Russians had for the atrocities that they were doing.
Yeah, yeah, it was very powerful hearing Russians talking so casually about things they were doing, confessing that, yeah, we are killing civilians. Yeah, we shot a mother in front of two of her children like it's nothing, or telling about stealing everything they can steal from Ukrainian homes, shooting prisoners of war, etc., etc. And the discussions they had about the war, you could see the how the Russian propaganda had penetrated the people, because they were talking about NATO's biolaboratories, you know,
Yes.
people asking from the soldiers that, have you seen any NATO bases there? And it's also interesting that some of the soldiers seem to be like enjoying it. One was telling how great it is to kill anybody that you want. And then there were very few soldiers who said that, you know, this whole propaganda, it's hell here. You know, I don't know why we are here. And talks about NATO troops, it's all lies. But they were a small minority. Most of them didn't seem to care. We are just here do what we want and steal what we can. And it was I'd say that it was a bit scary picture to the Russian mind listening these people.
Well, I call my film a documentary horror.
Yeah.
There is no such a genre, but I think that's what it is. It's a horror, it's a thriller, and unfortunately, what we see is not a fantasy. It's a reality. It's something that actually exists. That truly horrifies me as a human, as a filmmaker, as a citizen of Ukraine. And the film has a certain effect on the viewers as well. People do say that it's horrifying to watch the film. It's not an easy film to see, but so is the reality we live in Ukraine.
And seeing how, or listening how dehumanized the Ukrainians were for these Russians, because they were, you know, Ukrainians are just bandits, they are Nazis, they are fascists, they all deserve it, you know, kill them all. The attitude is, it didn't give me too much hope and faith that if the war ends and fighting ends, that there will be a very fast reconciliation between Ukrainians and Russians when the Russians see and don't understand the crimes they are conducting.
Of course. Well, that's what I discovered through this material that I listened to. I listened to approximately 30 hours of these intercepted phone calls. I discovered them online. I never, even though I wanted to receive some unposted material, I only worked with the one that was available online. When I approached the Ukraine Security Services, we received an answer that they could not give us more material because it is used in the investigation of the Russian war crimes in Ukraine. So I only could work with what was available online. But even what was available already gave me a very complex picture of the war, and the goal of the film was to encourage a conversation about not just what is going on right now, but what led to what happened. What are the reasons behind the invasion? How do Russians explain themselves? What kind of through our characters who are real Russian citizens, Russian propaganda speaks. Everything they say is, I believe, is not really the opinion that they came up with, but something that they learned from the Russian TV and media. They only speak with cliches that they hear constantly on their own TV. So what we really show in the film is how much Russian propaganda machine brainwashed the entire population of Russia, and how it promoted hatred towards Ukrainians, but not only Ukrainians, also West Europeans. There are all kinds of insulting words, lexicon that the Russians use as well towards Europe. They call it gay Europe, they call it all sorts of funny, insulting things. But this signifies to us that they do not agree, they do not support the European values. So it's not just about Ukraine, it's also about the whole set of values that we believe in here in Europe in general.
Yeah. Yeah, you could easily see that, the war had lasted already 8 years before the attack started. Ever since 2014, there's been war in Donbass, and all that time the Russian government has pushed the propaganda, and it's scary knowing that Ukraine and Russia has a long common history, and there's a lot of people who are married from Russia to Ukraine and vice versa. And now all this has been destroyed with this governmental propaganda, which has seemed to work, because listening to these people and their attitudes, they really believe that yes, attacking Ukraine is defending Russia, even though the soldiers didn't come up with any real reasons in Ukraine. Some even questions that why are we here fighting, because Ukrainians don't seem to. They just want to defend themselves.
Well, we clearly see that this is an ideological war.
Yeah.
Because exactly what you're saying, the common Russians don't understand what they are doing. They express all sorts of things, but those things, I don't think they believe in them. And they just say what they once again what they've heard, what they need to say, because they don't have other explanations.
Yeah. And it's interesting that there were several phone calls where they were talking about how the Ukrainians are living. That there's great stuff here. Everything is much more higher quality than back home. That they have better clothes, they have better furniture, better everything. And you could see the jealousy and hear the jealousy on those phone calls that Ukrainians have so much better than we have at home. But nobody stopped to think that why it is so. To stop to think that, well, it's actually because our government is robbing us blind, because Russia is the richest country in the world when you look at the national resources they have. But
when you look at the conditions in which people live, these are absolutely dehumanized, demoralized conditions. Everything is made in Russia for the most common people to feel like they don't have their dignity. Their life is totally unrespected.
Yeah. Well, how did you come to the idea of participating in this LUX reward competition?
Well, it's not. It was not my decision. The film was nominated for the award, along with 4 other films from the whole Europe, for which I'm very grateful, because it's an opportunity for us to reach out to Europeans in general, to a wider audience, perhaps the audience that are not like frequent or usual festival goers, people who, thanks to the award, thanks to the nomination, can discover the film through other platforms and means. So this is amazing. This is absolutely something that we are very happy with, because we can share our truths thanks to this opportunity.
Yeah, and I think it's extremely important, because when people look at and follow the war on internet or on media, it's about drones flying the tanks and artillery shooting and whatnot. And I think it's very important that people stop to think what it actually means to people, the civilians living in middle of this war, how it affects everybody, because then they hopefully think that this could happen to them too. We have a war in Europe, and Putin wants to continue the war.
I think it makes a whole total difference when someone actually goes to Ukraine and visits Ukraine and sees directly with their own eyes the aftermath of the Russian invasion. I think what people see has such profound impact on them, and something they cannot forget. When they see the most normal streets, the most normal houses, apartments destroyed, they identify to this much closer, much stronger, because they recognize in that home their own home. They see what could happen to them if they were in place of the people, of the victims of the invasion. So I think I'm very grateful for those politicians and those anyone who basically, even despite of the war, makes an effort and tries to understand the reality of Ukrainians and even visits Ukraine in person, because I think it really, really makes a difference.
Yes, it does. I believe so. And the fact is that, yes, EU and EU member countries have supported Ukraine a lot. EU has given like 120 billion euros worth of military support and support to civilian society, but it's still, it's very little. When you look at the wealth of Europe, we are talking about fractions of a percent of our GDPs. So, and Ukraine needs more help, because Ukraine is fighting for all of us, protecting Europe from Russian invasion, basically. And we need to be more supportive. And I think that this kind of films, because we are luckily living in a democracy, which is something that Russia hates and tries to destroy, but we are living in a democracy. And here the politicians tend to do what the voters want them to do. And I think that seeing this kind of documentary, understanding what war means, hopefully puts people to think and makes people to put pressure on politicians to do more to Ukraine and help that way to end the war and help Ukrainians get the peace that you deserve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, visiting the parliament, I had the chance to hear what people talk about, to attend some plenaries, and it really horrifies me that there are so many deputies who don't understand the terror, the scale of the terror that is happening in Ukraine, and the scale of the danger that is, is above Europe right now. It's
Yes.
like this dark cloud that they pretend not to see. This really scares me.
Yeah, and true, and this is something we've seen before, 100 years ago with Hitler. You know, he took piece by piece more and more, and we should have learned from that you don't control dictators by appeasement, because their appetite grows. The more they get, the more they want. And you have to stop them, and you have to use force to stop them if needed. And we have to understand that. And how Ukraine is fighting has shown that, yes, you can defend your values, you can defend your freedom, but it means a lot of sacrifices. I'm very happy that, I'm very sorry for Ukraine, but I'm very happy that Ukrainians have decided to fight and give us time to put our defenses to such a condition that we can stop Russia, because Russia is an existential threat to European democracy, not only military might, but also other means how they are attacking us. And the Ukrainian example is very important. And it's about the people, people who suffer because of this war, and showing what it means to people. How the war and dictatorship corrupts people in Russia, and on the other hand, what are the results to normal people here in Western Europe if we are attacked? It's very important, and thank you for that. Well, I think that is there anything else you want to say here in the end?
Well, I want to thank everyone who supports Ukraine for their support. For them staying with us. If I be honest, I don't understand why it is Ukraine that have to be to give that sacrifice. And I really hope for Europe to wake up and understand and see that our lives in Ukraine as valued have same value as your lives here in Europe. We are no way any worse people than you. We deserve for prosperous, free life. Before the full-scale invasion, we were fighting a lot inside of our country for us to have a better life. We were fighting against corruption, and I wish we could just focus on that and not defending and putting all our resources and our lives into protecting our physical existence.
Yes, I totally agree, and we owe that to Ukraine. As I said, you gave us time to get our act together, stopping Russia, and we need to support Ukraine now that you can continue defending until we have a peace that Ukraine can accept. We have to support Ukraine on reconstruction so that we can rebuild Ukraine better than it was before the Russian attack. And we have to also safeguard Ukraine's future through EU membership. We want the Ukraine to be a member of EU and member of NATO one day, because we, as seen the Finns and Baltic states and Poles and other people have seen that the best defense against Russian aggression is the integration to West through EU, through NATO, because united we are stronger, and united we can stop whatever threat facing us. But
Thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing, and remember, please remember to go and to internet, watch the documentary, and then go to luxaward.eu to vote and give your views about the documentary. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini!